All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Knife Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. My name is Denzel Mensa, and I'm an ENFJ.
And my name is Joyce, and I'm an INFJ. And today we have a guest, and his name is Prem. And he has a YouTube channel, actually, too. One on how it's like being an ENTP, specifically in the objective personality system, and another YouTube channel about meaning and life and love, and how everything links back to how we can deal with suffering better. And so I thought we would dive a little bit into that because it's his topic of specialty.
And it
And so,
gets into dissecting the human psyche and society.
Yeah,
mhm,
basically.
exactly, yeah. So,
hmm
Prem, would you like to?
Yeah. So my entire goal in life, I think we are living in a world where suffering is almost has this vibe of, oh, you're struggling through something. It doesn't feel like a road trip. Suffering doesn't feel fun. It feels like it's something you have to do and something you don't want to do. My goal is to find ways to make this entire process fun because it is fun. However, it's the way you perceive it really makes a difference. So I'm in that journey, exploring it, trying to document my journey, how I experience it, and trying to see if I could make it fun. And that's my journey. Yeah, that's what I'm about.
Interesting. So, just to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly, your journey in a nutshell is, or your objective is to try to make suffering itself fun.
Yeah, there is
How?
grace in suffering.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I said there is grace in suffering.
Got you. How would you define suffering?
Mm, Suffering is a dissonance that occurs when you want something but can't have it. So if you take what is, like if you take this moment and you say, you know what, I don't want this moment to be what it is. I want it to be something else. Let's say a cat
Mhm.
comes and I said, what cat bark, right? The cat meows, right? But no matter what you say to the cat, it's gonna meow. So what are you gonna do now? But if you want it to bark, now you're gonna suffer. Is that
Okay.
distance that's being created?
I think I get what you're saying. It's interesting though, because I feel like then by definition, it's no longer suffering. So would it be more? And I'm just spitballing here,
Yeah, yeah,
obviously. But would it be more accurate to then say that you're trying to find a cure for any situation in which people are suffering, as opposed to making suffering itself fun? Because I feel like as soon as you start having fun and
yeah.
enjoying, then by nature, or by definition, you're no longer suffering anymore.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, right? Because we are living in a life where suffering feels like it's a default, where it feels like if I throw the idea itself, oh yeah, just make suffering fun. It's like a fun process, like swimming, running. It's fun. You're like, wait, what? Suffering is fun? No,
Right.
it's not fun. What's fun is hanging out with your friends, the nightclub, and all that stuff, right? However, if you notice, what makes that thing fun itself is the is like the two sides of the same coin. Is the thing that you're just accepting the moment what it is. So we have a conceptual idea of what things should be like, so we suffer, and we are trying to move towards that vision so that your ego says you won't suffer. And once that vision comes into reality, then you get a very temporal pleasure, temporal, like a transient pleasure, and it fades away again because now your ego is like, I got this, but something is missing, you see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I get it. It's never enough. Did you notice it? I come all the way from India.
Mhm.
I've been with like very less money, lot of money. I had like hotel, everything paid for me, room service. I'm in Canada right now doing AI. But when is it enough, really? So
Interesting. Do you have anything to say, Joyce, before I probe more?
Yeah, so it seems like when there's meaning to suffering, it no longer becomes suffering. Or if you see that the suffering is actually challenge and you like challenge, then you see the suffering as rewarding because it's building up to something. I think something that can be totally painful about suffering is feeling like it will never lead to anything. It's like, this is unnecessary, which is why it feels like suffering. It's like, this is not adding to anything. This is not building towards a vision or a goal or a dream that I have, or it's not meeting my expectations. So it's ultimately an unnecessary pain in my life. And so when you're able to figure out why it is actually necessary, it seems like it takes away the edge, because now it seems like it's playing a part into a bigger whole. And so Prem does a really good job articulating that. And so you also are able to link back the concept of suffering back to love. So I was wondering how you do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One of the first thoughts that come to mind with the idea of suffering in that sense is like, I feel like it makes sense too, especially for an NE Dom, such as Prem, because that's kind of what NE, from my understanding, when it's done well, it's supposed to do. Like I remember from Personality Hacker, when they had a podcast on how all INPs can develop their extroverted intuition, and they were just giving you like small tips, but like one of the small tips that they gave was like, when you hop up out of bed, actually practice smiling, and pretty much I think it was something like saying like, I'm going to have a good day today, and like shifting your perspective in that way. That's like, today is going to be a good day. Like it's what you make it to be. And I thought that was like really interesting, because I feel like that is what NE is. It's like, okay, like we're going to take whatever is mundane right now, and we are going to, that's probably like in the external world, and we're going to embellish it in some way to make life more intriguing, something that's not going to keep us bored. If I'm not bored, then I'm not suffering, because I'm not suffering from boredom in a way. And so again, like what comes to my mind is, one of my easiest examples is like, I personally do not prefer the beach. I think that I just don't enjoy sand, like being all on my feet and everything. And then it's just really hot over there. And, getting like, I like my skin tone where it's at right now. I don't want to get any darker than that. So it's like, like, okay, there's a lot that just happens while you're at the beach in that way. The water over there is like really salty. It's a lot. People are sweaty. That's a lot of stuff. But if my friends are like really all wanting to go to the beach and I go with them, I'm not going to be sitting there suffering anymore, at least by nature of that definition. I have the choice to allow myself to suffer there, while I'm out on the beach and everything. But instead, I'm going to make myself enjoy being there, which means I'm by nature no longer suffering. I'm going to make the best of it. So I'm going to find all of the ways in which I can go against the idea of suffering, having a negative mindset, by making the best of the beach. Okay, I might not like sand or whatever, but let's still make sand castles. Let's still at least try to cool myself off from the sun by getting into the water. And, later on, sure, I might have to like deal with all the sand and like whatever else that might be coming from it, but I'm going to make it worth it by investing in the friends and family that I'm with at that time. And making it be like, yeah, I wasn't actually suffering because I was making myself enjoy myself. Would I go to the beach by choice? No, but I still made the best of that situation to where I'm not suffering. And I guess to tie that into love, in the Bible, it talks about how love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love is long suffering, which is a synonym for patience. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting. That when you really love someone, then you have patience for them. And sometimes being in a very patient state of mind in itself is a state of suffering. And so while you're suffering, because that's why they call it long suffering, which is patience, you're suffering, which is going back to what Prem was saying, that you're anticipating something that you want to happen right now. But now, again, going back to what Prem was saying, it's like instead of being in that anticipatory, however you say that word, anticipatory state of mind, you can find a way to transform that patience, that long suffering, to no longer be suffering or to be more fun, kind of like enjoying the road there rather than when you're going to just arrive. Yeah. So that's what I have in mind as we talk about that, just to throw onto the
Fair.
table.
No, it's quite nice. But here's the thing, right? I think any normal person, if you're watching this video, probably would have interpreted like that. But there's like a nuanced thing what I'm saying here. I think we are living in a world. Let me tell you the problem first. I think we're living in a world with like six-pack shortcuts kind of mentality. Like, let's say I have a problem. This conversation is about the solution. All right. But we never investigate itself why the problem is even arising in the first place. Also, for me personally, I have a huge resistance in implementing someone else's problems because one of the core one of someone else's solutions, because one of my core values is not to trust any authority figures. If I have to trust you to for me to be happy, now my happiness is dependent on you. It's the same mechanism for which I'm suffering. So rather than my suffering coming from a beach, it would come from you, right? Because I'm trusting your word, right? So So to even eliminate that, the real question is why is it even happening, right? And to really integrate love into this, the real question is why. The answer is love, obviously. But there's not any kind of love. By love, I mean a very existential sort of love, because love is connection. And if you notice, he said love is patience, love is kind, love is generous, and so on. Those are like ways to practice love. But if you go a little bit deeper to see what makes someone patient, like how do you practice patience, right? If you go in deeper and try to like even go down to the ingredients of it, it's like whenever you give your attention to something, you're automatically showing love. Whenever you're giving time, you're spending time with something, you're automatically showing love. The reason is you only are conscious about the things that you love. So the entire your entire bubble of experience is what you love or hate. Even hate is you have something else you strongly love in your imagination. Meaning you use your so here's what happened. We are here happy, but then we use our imagination to create this entity that we love even more than this moment. I get a pizza, I'm like, oh, let me get the pizza. Now I'm spending a lot of time, attention, patience, respecting its sovereignty is another form of seeing love. Seeing beauty in something is seeing love, right? So rather than seeing beauty in this moment, we are seeing beauty in that bubble of imagination that we have created, right? And we're forming a connection to it, see? But there's like a dissonance here between what it could be versus this moment. And as that distance increases, the suffering increases. And as that distance closes in, the suffering decreases. The real question is this: having this bubble of imagination is not wrong. You could have whatever you want. But the real question is, does it serve you to have it? Because oftentimes this bubble of imagination is something that we don't even want. It's just like style programming or people around you valuing something. People around you value carrots. You also like carrots. It doesn't mean it's something that it serves you, you know. The best example for it is diamonds. Entire diamonds were like marketing. However, the diamonds were blood mined, right? They call it blood diamonds because you had to like lose life to like mine the diamonds. However, that didn't matter. See, if you just covered up that fat and just looked at the beauty of the diamonds, people loved it because they showed up. They saw beauty in it. They gave their attention. They gave it time. They gave their money, right? However, what you love and what you hate, it didn't serve us, which is why lab-grown diamonds became a thing now, right? When you look at the reality of the situation, it didn't serve us. And what I'm getting at here is the solution to this entire problem is not what we are saying. it's really a choice that you make. Okay, I have this bubble of experience. What about this experience serves me? What about this experience doesn't serve me? If I'm having a bubble of experience and if it doesn't even serve me and I'm suffering because of it, rather than trying to like do any solution, why not just drop it? But Prem, how can you drop it so easily like this? Well, the moment your soul realizes that it doesn't serve you, you're gonna drop it. And I'm sure you. I think you look fit. I think you're also a physical trainer, right? I think you would have seen that shift, right? A person when they really start working is when they realize, when the soul realizes that, oh, it doesn't serve me anymore. So
Yeah.
stay like this. And then
Yeah. Yeah. I'm processing all of what you said.
it's too much.
No, it wasn't too much. I'm just piecing
Yeah,
it together. NINTI. So
yeah.
it's a lot slower. NI with TI inferior at that. So it's like, okay. So I'm just making sure that I understood everything that you were saying. But
I'm saying the same content, but it's a different context.
Yeah. When Prem said suffering is when you love something more in your head than the reality in front of you, I was like, ooh, I feel called out.
Mhm. Yeah, it reminds me of I'm reading through a book right now called Love and Limerence. And I also know that Heidi Priebe had put out a video on the term limerence. And so it's so funny because like this year is the first time I heard the word, and all of a sudden now like the word is kind of like floating around. But essentially this idea of limerence is when you're more in love with pretty much the idea of someone
Yeah.
than the person itself. And so you're using your imagination and little tidbits of what you can glean from the person that fits whatever you're making up about the person to then fuel what your imagination is of the person. And it's
Yeah.
almost like the more that you experience the person in reality, then the more that limerence starts to fade because you're realizing that you don't actually like the person. You just like the idea that you've conjured of the person. And so, in a sense, I'm seeing, from what I'm understanding, is that Prem is saying that a lot of us tend to have a sort of limerence with life. And in a way, we are allowing ourselves to understand or to pretty much have this ideal of how life should look like, an expectation, and we're not really just getting life for what it is and making the best of it there. And that's where the suffering might come from, because we're not, the more that we, correct me if I'm wrong, Prem, but I feel like what you're saying is like a lot of times the more that we accept life for what it is, or see life for what it is rather than accept it, but just see life for what it is, then the more that suffering increases.
Yeah, but if you like try to like implement that in your life, uh, then the question is where would you get your motivations from? If you were to accept life as is, right? If it didn't matter if I became fat or if I became thin, and I'm happy either way, what would motivate me to become thin or
Right.
fit?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the real problem here, right? I mean, if you like follow that chain,
Pain is sometimes a good motivator. Sometimes it feels good to be in that state of limerence because that fantasy, there's this hope that it'll become reality. And so you're just waiting for it.
it's an interesting problem, right? Because if you say like this, if you're using fear-driven motivation, it gets you to only where you're comfortable with. It doesn't push you beyond limits. It doesn't give you that infinity potential. If you were like super fat, it gets you to a point where you are normal. It does not push you anywhere beyond. That is why every fear-based motivation is always limited by what you can observe outside. So for example, if I was like super fat and I saw a fat man becoming thin, then that becomes a possibility in my head, and now I can use fear to like drive myself. But
Gotcha.
the first fat guy who thought that this is like impossible and to like drive himself, he would have needed love.
Okay. So where would suffering come in with the example of the fat guy who saw another fat guy becoming thin?
He would recognize the suffering. Your heart would recognize the suffering that the other heart has also felt, but he would recognize the choices being different. Okay. Look at this. It's simple, right? But I'm using the same word, but in like different contexts, which is why it's confusing. But I do not know how else to like use it, because love is a closer approximation. It's not the thing. So let's say we take this fat man example, right? So let's say I'm fat, all right. I was fat. I was 86 kilos. For Americans, it's heavy. That's what it is.
Got you.
And I lost a lot of weight. And it's funny because when I was fat, there was a part of me that looked at myself, and the part of me that looked at myself recognized me being unloved, and like I didn't fit. I felt like I didn't fit, and even though I know the other person didn't care, especially guys, I felt guilty for being fat around like the fit guys. So when I looked around and when I looked outside at oh wow, so this like a super, like when you see like a 600-pound guy go from that to like super thin or whatever. And I thought, okay, if this is possible, why not for me? If this should also be possible for me, right? But what made me fat? See, love. But what kind of love? Rather than thinking about things materialistically, which is why this concept is so hard to articulate, because you look at things, look at everything like bubbles of entity, right? Like if you see, I mean, if you're religious or not religious, imagine if you take a god and if he created something, let's say God used like some material to create something, the elixir, right? Whatever. So if God created something, let's say every God created like a bubble of entity, small bubble of entity. Your body is an entity, you're an entity, this thing is an entity, this watch is an entity, whatever, right? So what's happening in the entire dynamics of entities is that your body is recognizing that you are feeling unloved, and the way your body knows how to express love, the way it knows is to make you eat something good, make you eat
Mm,
something nice.
mm, I
that,
see.
that's its expression of showing love.
Hmm.
Just like the water's expression of showing love to me is by quenching my thirst, right?
Hmm.
But that's what limits form, because the expression of love is limited. If I want water to fly or if I want my water to give me a massage, it doesn't. It can only quench my thirst. And that is the expression, that's the highest expression it has. So right now, when I was overeating, what happened is my body loved me. My body loved itself. My body is also fear driven, right? My
Hmm.
body's connection to itself was more than my connection to myself and that vision. So when my body loves itself more than I love the vision for becoming thin, so who's gonna win?
Mm, got you.
So
Got you.
the shift that you really see is not that diet or not anything. The initial shift that you see for the motivation is that when you have a vision that you love more than the body's love for itself, when you see a more beautiful expression of love in the vision that you have than your body sees for itself,
Hmm.
then the choice will be obvious.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So then now just making sure that I'm piecing everything together. In that same analogy, where does suffering become fun?
When you look at this analogy, suffering becomes fun because throughout this process, you're forming a connection to different forms of consciousness. Because that's what love does. It integrates. We are living in a very fragmented world, and it's fine. But the journey of that we are all going through is throughout this fragmented world. By the end of the life, we are less fragmented,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that is the we are entering into a dark room, and that is the light see, because every time we unite with something, it's a beautiful experience.
Hmm.
That is what the entire hero's journey is about. If you watch any movies, first initially the hero loves himself, then some event happens, then the hero loses connection with himself. I was watching this Tom Gun movie. I was watching a Top Gun movie. So this, of course, Tom Cruise, charismatic, handsome guy, happy or whatever. Then something happens. He crashes the plane or something, and he gets called in by the general, and he says something, and he loses connection to himself. And the entire movie, he's trying to love an aspect of reality that he didn't like before. That is teaching how to fly. Like he always identified as a pilot, not as a teacher, because he didn't think he had the capabilities to teach. So the entire movie is revolving around him discovering that he doesn't like an aspect of reality, but recognizing that it's something I need and I need to integrate with myself. And the entire hero journey is like him becoming a teacher and training like this groups of people. And throughout that journey, he's learning to love an aspect of reality that he didn't love before. The movie, the holy grail is I formed a connection with this aspect of reality, and you can too.
Wow.
No.
Yeah. That was really well stated, Prem. And you mentioned about how there are certain expressions of love that are more limited and certain expressions of love that are more infinite. And so it seems like the connection you have with yourself, or the connection of love you have towards yourself and your dream, or just who you are, or just that intrinsic connection, is the most infinite form of love that you can have. And that if you don't have that, then it fragments every other form of love that you could have in your life, and it's not as strong, or so it all comes from a well of and a fountain of self-love first.
So there's all love trying to there's all love trying to like connect with different aspects of love.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, it's a very interesting concept to continue to think about. Like I said, I'm processing it as you explain,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh, okay. And unfortunately, with the lack of NE, then I might not have
No.
much to throw right now, and I need to let it marinate first, and then it's like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can kind of relate what Prem is saying back to perhaps an inner counsel in your mind, and bear with me here. So let's say that you are the main person who oversees the counsel in your mind. But when you don't love yourself, you're not taking care of that counsel in your mind. So let's say one part of the counsel is the part of your body. Your body's like, oh, if the main person who's looking over us isn't even caring about us, well, I'm just going to overeat because that's how I show love to this main person. And then the other part of you is like, oh yeah, you know what? This other addiction that I have, it can be any worldly addiction. I will do that because that's love, because I don't have any main vision from the main person who's supposed to be overseeing us to direct us all towards what a more infinite love is. So when you don't really have the conductor in your brain telling you where to and how to channel your love towards yourself, then it just goes all haywire, and you start to do things that are satisfy parts of you, but it doesn't satisfy the whole of you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then Prem's objective, to be restated, is to help people to, please correct me and calibrate me if I'm wrong, I'm just making sure I get it, is to help people understand what self-love actually looks like, and not the distorted version of what self-love might look like. And then in having a proper view of self-love, then suffering will still ensue, but while you're suffering, you will be accepting reality, which once you accept your reality and you begin to love yourself and reality, then you are no longer, well, not that you're no longer suffering, but the suffering becomes fun.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give you like one last example, and you'll probably get the idea. So we are living in a fragmented world, and especially I love fitness, I love real world examples because of it. So if you're trying to like motivate myself, what I notice within myself is a deep sense of separation between my desire versus my body's desire, and it's almost like a cat fight. Which cat is going to win? You know, And it's a lot of effort. And I personally do not like it. I do not enjoy the process. I do not enjoy being forced. And if you watch any motivation video online, it's all about there's a part of you that's trying to kill you, but you're trying to kill it first. Or you're trying to like, overcome that. And that's the vibe, right? And I do not like that. Even though we are in the same team with the same agenda, we're acting like we are in different teams, trying to like be at each other's throat. So for me, self-love here is so it's like everyone inside them is like a I'm like shifting to a different analogy now to like explain a different concept of what the dynamic feels like to me. Everyone inside has like a chef. It's the world's best chef. It can cook any food it wants, like this, snap of a finger. It knows how to do everything. However, the only problem is he's not cooking a dish that you want. If you want a cake, he's making pasta. Pasta is good, but you want cake, right? Now you now you're like, okay, I do not want cake, I want pasta. So rather than just telling the chef I want pasta, now we try learning how to make pasta by ourselves. Now you see there's a dissonance here. Because now you have now you have a chef that wants to make a cake or pasta. And you have a chef who's making a cake, and you have you who's trying to make a pasta. And we do a horrible job at it, right? Because we are not aware of all the unconscious shadow and all that realm, right? So now the real question is, rather than trying to have a competition between chefs, how can you just tell your chef that I don't want a cake, I want pasta? That's what I want. So how do you form a connection? See, I was seeing self-love. It's a past. Now how do you form a connection? The same thing. Love, not love, attention, time, seeing beauty in it, what you love. That is why you said love is like patience, kindness, right? That is an aspect of love, that's forgiveness, right? That's forgiving a part of yourself that doesn't serve you. You're basically accepting a part of yourself that doesn't serve you. But to motivate the part of yourself to command the chef to say, oh, I want this, is to basically use your imagination, is to create a bubble and love that bubble more. And how do you practice love? By spending time and giving your attention. Now you're seeing a connection in every like fitness or any like motivation. You see the vision board. This is why the vision boards work. Because every time you're doing vision board, you're practicing love. And what your chef is trying to make is trying to make something you love. If you think subconsciously in a very narcissistic way that you like pasta, but you as a high mighty guy know what the right thing to eat is, which is like cake or something. But if your deep sense of narcissism like pasta, then what dishes is the chef gonna make? Pasta, right?
Right. Yes.
The real question you're asking, so we have to suffer, but we're being okay with it. Suffering is arising because you're under competition against like the best chefs in the world. You don't have to suffer. You'll have creative character building conflicts. And what that feels like, creative character building conflicts, is if you're in a tennis match, right? Let's say if you're being in a super corporation, oh no, you know what? We are like one man, we are blah blah blah, right? And if you're not playing a dance, there's not going to be any game. They won't. It would be a draw. They won't say, "I won't want to fight you. How can I fight you? I love you so much." No. But let's say if you absolutely despise a person, like I want to kill you, now it turns like a lot of violence, right? But what good game is that you guys acknowledge each other's skill, but now you have a game where you have like respect, love, patience, you have an understanding, you have an empathy. See, you're developing an empathy. And you might ask, Prem, why am I going through all the struggle? This seems like a lot. Trust me, it's not. Because when you solve the relationships that you have with yourself, you're also solving the relationships that you're having with other people. Or it's the other way around. So let's say you do something I hate. The way I respond to what you do, uh, the way I respond to your hatred is the same way I would respond to my body's hatred towards me.
Interesting.
So if you did something I hate, and if I'm not showing you empathy, then if I did something I hate, then I won't even show myself empathy. Or if my body did something I hate, I won't even show my body empathy. Now you see where the dissonance is coming. It's like the same problem manifesting in like different ways. because subconsciously this is what we think we love.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense.
See, it's all connecting. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Oh, go ahead, Joyce.
Yeah, and if you don't have the correct amount of self-love, you don't know if the thing that you're actually chasing is a thing that you actually want or a thing that society tells you that you want to, because you're not even in tune with yourself enough to know if you even like the thing in front of you. And so, like, the first step to even being honest with yourself is loving yourself, because you can't even know or have a good radar for what you actually want until your self-love is at a certain level. And so Prem brings these really interesting concepts to the table. There's something interesting that was mentioned too, and it was, things that don't serve you. And I've always tried to understand that phrase. And I wonder if everything is serving something. So if it's not, like, if the things that you do are not serving you right now, they're just serving a younger version of you more, or a different version of you more. And so it's not relevant to you now, and it's the wrong strategy. It's not an effective strategy to have at the moment, but it's all well intentioned because it wants to be serving something. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, that's true. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think I'm just taking in all of the information, but it's a really interesting concept to think about. And I'm curious, Prem, how did you come to this conclusion and then have the motivation to want to talk about it? And then I guess from there, I would ask, what would you say for everyone who's now watched this? Like, of course, definitely go follow Prem's channel. It's going to be in the description, where you'll get more. But after you explain like how you came to this, or what even made you start thinking about all of this, I would like to know, like, what would some of the practical steps be to be able to, for people to just implement this kind of idea in their lifestyle?
So since 18 years, since 16 years old, I used to like watch these Japanese animations. It's called animes or whatever. And I love them. I love the vision because it's a very idealistic vision that they portray. Like a very ideal scene is cartoon. Of course, it's going to be ideal. In my heart, I felt this is going to be real. But as life moved on, I could slowly feel the dissonance between what actually happens and how people actually teach each other versus how people teach each other in cartoons, right? But inside me, I have like a deep sense of desire that if I read one more book on like maybe because I thought, oh, if I just one more book on understanding social cues, boom, I'll be like the perfect and that dream would like come true. But then the one book became one more book, and from 18 to like 22, I read all books in spirituality, reading different religions, because for me suffering is not optional. It comes it comes periodically. I do something, and every 6 months this thing. And the first time I suffered, I was at a predicament. In India, unless you don't go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It's I think even like in our minority culture, I think that's a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only question is, how do I fix this or I live with this? And the only thing I'm really grateful for is I love myself too much where I thought I have to like fix this somehow. And for me, I thought if I just read one book on understanding emotions or something like that, probably I'll get through. But as I was like trying to understand what are practical step by step things I can do, I can go for like I got suffering point A to like no suffering point B. What is like practical step by step? Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, do this. Right? That's what I wanted, but I didn't just want that. I wanted why this is working. But once you start asking why, and if you like go deep enough, this is where like you go into spirituality. But even spirituality is a field called self-inquiry. Then you go deeper and go more deeper. Then you finally start seeing all these like connections, like how everything is like how everyone is trying to like say the same thing in like different ways. and how everyone discovered different facets of love itself.
Hmm.
Some really emphasize on the beauty of love. Some, like, what is beauty? When you look at something as is and your ego has no judgments on it. If you look at something and you're like, oh, this is perfect as is, you find it beautiful. Beauty arises, right? That's a form of love, acceptance and love, right? Mixed. But then there's like forgiveness also. It's a different quality of love, which is like a much more heart centered and like acceptance. Even though you did wrong to me, I can empathize how you loved yourself so much that from your perspective, hurting me was the thing you wanted to do so that you don't lose connection to yourself.
Hmm.
That's what he's saying, right? If someone hurt me, he's hurting me because from his perspective, he has a connection to himself. So he's gonna lose his connection if he doesn't hurt you. That's what he's thinking, see? Just like my body is thinking that, oh, if I don't do this, I'm gonna lose connection with myself. Like different entities, see?
Yeah.
And for me to like not lose connection with myself, I should eat. And here am I looking at all this, okay, to like not lose connection with myself, I need to like demonize you, right? Or
Hmm.
demonize myself. You can go one step further, feel guilty about it, demonizing him, then demonize yourself, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So that you don't lose the connection with yourself. See, that's a denial phase. That's what they call a shadow aspect. So
Hmm.
so everyone kind of like there's another one called no self or non-duality, or yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called nothingness, or you're like staying with the. It's called peace. Yeah, that's the quality of love that they're trying to like hit on. Is that peace where you're just staying with the moment and you have no desires or motivations, kind of, but you're just living in the present. It's a different expression of love. It's just acceptance to the full. You're giving your complete attention and time to this moment as is without any desire to change it. That's peace. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's all just love, you see, manifesting. So it's all love. It's all different entities of love trying to like unify together. That is the entire process. See, even this conversation right now is
Yeah.
just that we have a problem. There are some things in reality where when that comes in our awareness, we lose connection to ourselves. Now we are all sitting together in a round table and saying, okay guys, this thing is coming, and whenever this thing comes, we stop loving ourselves. Now what do we do? Welcome to business.
Hmm.
So, does
Yeah.
suffering come from stopping seeing the beauty in the things around you or in your situation or what's causing you suffering? So, it's almost like the moment when because you kind of define beauty as you accept it as it is. It's so beautiful that you
Yeah.
don't really place judgment on it in a critical, like in a mean way. And I wonder if suffering comes from you see the situation, but you strip it of its beauty in your own mind. And so the beauty really exists in your future imagination of the thing rather than the beauty that's already there.
So with the beauty, what the entire process is not just that you're not seeing. Beauty is interesting because what I find personally beautiful, I was at Toronto Art Gallery, and on the fifth floor I saw something beautiful. So they had like this the 3 by 3, like 9 cathode ray TVs, like the old ones, which had like clips of 1900s movies where of people dancing, playing like like a ballroom dance, uh, and they had like music and stuff. And I was just looking at that, and all of them like captured moment where for a moment everyone's just happy. All the clips captured like they're dancing, having fun, and they're happy. That's it. For that one moment, and I saw beauty in it, but I didn't know what that meant. I still am trying to like really figure out what it really means for something to be beautiful. But I thought, okay, you know what? When I'm in that moment, when I look at this, it looks perfect.
Hmm.
There's nothing about it same, but there's a part of me that feels connected to a part of them as well. When I look within, I'm like, it's a part of me. When I look at them, through them, I'm living an experience which makes me feel more connected to myself, and
Huh.
that for me is a beautiful experience.
Hmm. Wow.
That's interesting. Yeah. beauty is something that allows you to feel more connected to yourself. That's an interesting way of putting it.
I feel even empathy is that, right? I think whenever you find something beautiful, you have empathy. You like to, you want to protect it, you want to nurture it. That's why global warming is a, like greenhouse, the entire foresting is a thing, right? Even though we do not feel connected to the trees as we feel more connected to the humans, we see beauty in nature. And because we see beauty in nature, there's a sense of us that wants to like protect it, take care of it, because it's beautiful. Which is why pandas also didn't die yet. Because pandas, if you look at it, they don't do anything. They just sit. They don't even have sex. They just sit there and they just. But they're cute, so
Wait, then how do they make more pandas? Like,
they
I'm
just,
sorry, I'm just trying to understand that.
they kind of like put them together and proximity. Love, attention. You see, pandas put two pandas in a box. You're gonna get more pandas. Yeah.
Yeah. So Prem brings this interesting idea about how beauty is something that brings us closer to ourselves or brings a better connection with ourselves. And I thought about that and I was like, that's true. Because when it comes to the things that I found beautiful, whether it's people, the specific things that they'll do, it's either allowing me to be more connected with parts of myself I didn't even know existed, or they allow me to even feel more connected to maybe a future vision that I have of something, or they allow me to feel connected to the potential of life itself. But
Mhm.
it's through connecting me to that, they connect me closer to myself. And I wonder if that's what makes people special to you. I don't know, they
Yeah, makes sense.
add a certain level of connection to even yourself that you never knew was possible.
I know that's definitely a big case for me. Like I learn a lot about myself through my interactions with people and learning more about them as well. Um,
Me too.
it's a very interesting concept though to think about. And I'm glad that you have that you've been able to actually find a way to motivate and encourage people to be able to think in this way, in this fashion on your channel. Because yeah, I feel like that could be like very like revolutionary.
Yeah.
If I'm like understanding it all correctly. And maybe for some it'll be a lot easier said than done, but with enough mental practice and prowess and suffering, if you will, then they'll be able to arrive at that point where they will no longer be suffering in that way. Or they'll, yeah, like you said, like they'll be able to enjoy it.
The analogy I really like is if you enter a piano shop, all right? She has a beautiful piano actually. Uh, and
Prem's at my house right now. That's why I was
yeah,
saying that.
Yeah.
she has a beautiful piano, and so I asked her to play the piano. She's like, sometimes. So I thought, let me like try it. I opened the piano and I'm playing a couple of notes, right? But this one note sounded like off. Okay, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this one note sounded off. But then I thought, the next following thought was, I just have to tune it a bit. Then it'll be perfect, right? But I don't do that with myself. Like when I have like a thought and I'm suffering, it's basically that there's one note that's detuned. So when I hear it, it doesn't sound right. Right? So suffering is just that. It just says that there's a note that doesn't sound right. But then what would you do with that? You won't just say this entire piano is bad and throw it out, right? You would
Right.
take love, you use your attention, kindness, compassion to like take care of the piano and then take time to tune it. It's a self-love.
We're all just instruments that need to be
Yeah.
tuned.
Just look, this is a complicated concept, honestly. But it's a complicated concept. The alternative is like fear-driven. Just have a person scare you to death to like do something, right? But it doesn't give you satisfaction. It'll make you materialistically satisfied but emotionally starved. And it takes you to a place that's comfortable but not your full potential and your creativity. And then it's also slower. What, like, doing something you love, when you're in a creative state takes much shorter time compared to like doing it when you're forced to do it. Imagine this. Two people getting married. The world celebrates it such a grand way. Two people being connected. Imagine so many other people have the same connection. Imagine how big the celebration would be. For just two people, entire world unites when they get married, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Everyone connected like that. How big would the celebration really be then? One last mindfuck on all this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that
Totally.
there is all this dynamic playing out, right? And then there is me witnessing all this and allowing all this to happen because that's how unconditionally loving I am. See, the guy witnessing this has no conditions on love. That is
Right.
why he's even allowing suffering to exist.
Hmm.
So the part of you that's witnessing all this is unconditionally loving by default.
Hmm.
Because the person who's witnessing does not have any preferences. Witness, the awareness itself, and that's like a real mindfuck. Because I always felt unloved, thinking, damn, this I feel unloved. No, nothing's coming for me. Um, Nothing's working for me. Things are working much better for like other people and stuff like that. But once I realized how much different parts of me loved myself, and even I unconsciously loved myself in the way it knows how, right? Not in a way that served my egoistic needs. In its way, just like a child, the way it knows how to show love might not help us in any way, but the expression is really appreciated, right? And
Hmm.
all you're allowing this all just happen within an unconditionally loving perspective in the first place. That's what even allows this entire dynamic to take place because the person doing all this itself is unconditionally loving as a default state, and that allows this entire dynamic, this entire like symphony to like take place. That's the crazy part, which is why in Buddhism or any other religion, the entire the pressure is on cultivating the awareness, cultivating
Hmm.
the loving awareness, right?
which is beautiful.
or
Yeah.
or if you're like other religions, you could cultivate love
Yeah.
and values, and through that cultivate the awareness. See, because either way it's the same thing.
Yeah. Cultivating a loving awareness regardless of whatever circumstance you're in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is nothing new. It's not like I'm saying anything like super new. It's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Every religion has been saying for like millions of years. It's just
Mhm.
like a 21st century spin-off. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's usually how any SI is. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
But no, I get that was part of why I was like interesting because yeah, it's like nothing new under the sun, but at the same time, like the way that you're presenting it is it's I don't even know the word to use, but yeah, I mean, overall, it's still like it's very, like I said, it's very interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's just something that I'm continuing to process in my head to make sure that I understand completely. And then also processing in my head uh, different scenarios in which it would still continue to stand. And when it's not self defeating and stuff like that, which I know like for me, it takes time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I'm more of just taking in the information and being like, interesting. But I think that regardless, I'm gonna already have fun editing this video and continuing to mull over everything that was stated. And I think that the people watching would definitely have a lot to think about as well. And I think that would be pretty dope.
Yeah. So it seems like suffering is something inevitable in life. We have a lot of pain and hardship, and there are just some things that are so dark that happen to us. And there are countless things like death or disease or something that will cause great tragedy in our lives. But there's a way for us to also not add on to the suffering that already exists by accepting it. because when we resist the suffering that is, we make it even more strong. And so, the saying, what you resist persists, is very true. And so I feel like Prem's motto of awareness, acceptance, and love, it really allows you to not suffer twice.
Yeah, and I think that's really good and makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I feel like
makes sense.
I just have to sit with it more. What did you say, Prem?
No, I said, yeah, it makes sense to me as well.
Of course. You're like philosophy.
For sure. Prem, where can we find you on YouTube?
So you can just search Nurture1412 and you should be able to find me there. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And we'll make sure to put that in the description for anybody who's willing to go and check out his channel. Then I guess until next time, thanks y'all for watching and
Thanks for having
stay
me.
sharp.
Oh.
また夜が明ければお別れ夢は遠き幻に